Welcome, everybody. This is episode 8 of the Phu Podcast. Thank you for joining the show. I'm your host, Phu, and today we're going to be talking about some pretty epic topics, especially something that's really important to me, something that I really care about, and I want to share my journey with you about how I became the fastest speedrunner in the world in Ocarina of Time. If you know me by now, you probably know that I streamed on Twitch from 2017 up until recently this year, and I had quite the journey where I discovered this game. Like a game that I already knew since I was a kid, called The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. It's a game that was released on the Nintendo 64 back in 1996 to 1998, I believe. In Australia, I believe we got it in 1998. So I played it as a kid. And then in 2017, I discovered live streaming. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But first, I'll give you guys some life updates. So I'm going to be entering my very first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition later this year. It's going to be in December. It's going to be the very first time I've ever competed as a Jiu-Jitsu athlete. I'm currently a white belt, so it means I'm a beginner. And I have very healthy expectations because it's not the first thing I've ever competed in. Like I've competed in 8-ball, different sports. And I know usually your first couple competitions, it's to get experience. So it's not that I don't believe in myself. It's not that I don't believe I'm going to achieve and like I'm going to gold or I'm going to beat everyone that day. It's just that I know that when it comes to competition, it's good to have healthy expectations. Like try your best, do your absolute best. But sometimes having too big of an expectation can backfire. So I know personally from experience, like if you listen to previous episodes where I talked about the journey and the outcome, I believe that was episode 2, where I entered my first pool tournament and I got destroyed. So now that I'm 32 with a bit more life experience, I'm entering with healthy expectations. I know I'm not going to be a world beater. I know I'm not going to beat Gordon Ryan in the future. Like that's too past me, but I can still do my best. So anyway, today I'm going to share a story with you, a very recent story about how I became one of the best speedrunners in the world, and I still am, I believe, one of the best speedrunners in the world. That's subject to change. People can have their opinions, but I achieved 5 speedrunning world records in The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, specifically the category called Defeat Ganon no SRM. Now, if you're not a gamer, if you're not in the Twitch, all of this is just random jargon. But specifically, imagine like if you think of like the Olympics, think of like sprinting, and they have different lengths of race, like 100-meter race, 400-meter race, 800-meter race, 4 kilometers, 8 kilometers, 10 kilometers. Think of it like that. Now, when it comes to speedrunning, which is basically beating a game as fast as possible without any outside assistance or cheats, you do it all within the game with your own hands, with your own ability. Yeah, I ended up achieving 5 world records, and my most recent world record was back in May this year. And after that point, I stopped having so much of a passion for speedrunning, and I decided to move my life forward in a different direction. So, the story begins here. The story begins in early 2017. So this is early 2017. This is just after a couple days or weeks after New Year's 2017. Around the time I had just finished a year of therapy, so I was still in recovery from depression and anxiety. And I remember sitting in my backyard. I was sitting on this couch that my family bought. And I remember I was sipping on some water. I think I was also sipping on a coffee. And I remember making 2 wishes to myself. So the first wish was, for 2017, I want to try something new. And then my second wish, so I was looking up at the sky and I made a second wish. And I said to myself, I want to meet new people. I want to make new friends. Now, for some reason that particular day, here's what happened. So to add some more context to the story, I actually was aware of Zelda speedrunning years prior. There was a video by a speedrunner who goes by the name Narciso Wright, and they made a video about how they became the fastest Zelda speedrunner in the world, which was in 18 minutes and 10 seconds. Now, I watched this video back in 2014 on YouTube, and at the time I thought it was really cool. I watched it. This was back when I just finished university around that time. And I thought it was really cool. Now, we fast forward to 2017, and for some reason, that video popped up in my mind that day. It was like a sunny afternoon, and I'm like, you know what? Is that still like the world record for Zelda? So I typed in like Zelda world record on YouTube, and to my surprise, it was no longer the world record. Somebody else had the world record. And I believe at the time, it was 1713 by Torj. So Torj is a good friend of mine. We've been friends. I actually met him in 2019 in person, which was pretty cool. I also commentated on his feature, Ocarina of Time 80% Speedrunner Summer Games Done Quick 2019 in Minneapolis, but we'll get to that. So I watched Torge's video and I'm like, wow, this person beat it in a whole minute faster than Narcissa Wright. That is insane. And as I was watching this video, I noticed that he was talking to somebody. Now, at the time, live streaming was not a concept to me. Like, I've heard about it, but I never really experienced it or seen it. So I'm watching this YouTube video of Torge, and he's playing The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, and he's beating it really fast, like faster than Narcissa did. And I'm like, this is insane. Then in the recommended section, there was another video. It was a 17 minutes and 15 second speedrun. The second place runner, Skater 8297, I believe that's right. Sorry, Skater, if you listen to this and I got that wrong. So there was a second place runner named Skater, and I watched that video as well. And I quickly realized that, wait, something's happening here. First of all, they're a minute faster than Narcissa's 1810, so something's changed. Second, who are they talking to? So I'm watching these YouTube videos, and if you ever watch recordings of speedruns, these are actually done live, recorded and then uploaded to YouTube, and people are talking to what's called a chat or a Twitch chat. It's a live chat box where people can interact with the streamers. At the time, I didn't know what that was. And I'm watching these videos and I'm like, who are they talking to? So then I went to the description sections of the videos and I saw watch me live at twitch.tv/Torge/Skater. I'm like, wow, okay. So I clicked on the link and neither of them were live. I'm like, oh, this sucks. So I remember for the next week, every single day, I kept refreshing the link. Like throughout the day, I'll just load up their Twitch streams and neither of them were live. So this went on for about a week and I was a bit disappointed because I'm like, oh, I really want to see this live stream thing. I have no idea what it is. And then one magical day, I went to Skater's channel and he was live. He was streaming to about 120 people at the time, and he was doing any percent speedruns for world records. So at the time, he was trying to beat Torge's time, and he was second place by just about 2 seconds. Now I'm watching, and I noticed that this is cool. Like this guy with a beanie and long hair is just sitting there in his room playing video games, and he's talking to somebody. And once again, I'm looking at Twitch chat. And after about 10 or 15 minutes of me just sitting there on my old laptop at the time, I had an old laptop from university, and I'm watching, and I'm like, this is really cool. So I went to go type something in the chat box, and it said, you need to make an account. So I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll just use that Richard Sage name that I used to use for different blogs that I used to run back in like university. So I always had pen names, that way to protect my identity, to protect myself. And also my friend just told me that, you know, Anglo-Saxon white sounding names do better on the internet and people just treat you better. So I followed that advice from back then. So I made Richard Sage and then I went back to Skater's channel and I remember typing something like, hey, Skater, good luck. Something like that, right? And I'll never, ever forget this experience. Now, if you've watched my live streams, you know I've told this story hundreds of times and I'll say it the same every time. After about 10 or 15 seconds, I remember watching Skater and his eyes looked at the Twitch chat. And this is the moment that turned my life in a completely different direction. Skater looks at the chat and he goes, oh, thank you, Richard. And I was just like, I remember, I never forget this. I rolled my chair back, I stood up, and I literally said to myself, what is this website? This guy just talked to me. I was like, this guy just talked to me. I typed something into his chat box and he talked to me. What is this? And I'll never forget it. For the next, it was like 5+ hours. I was 100% hooked on his stream. Like I struggled to go to the bathroom because I didn't want to miss anything. There were people to talk to in the chat box. Like at the time, like I'm a millennial, I'm 32 years old. So we grew up with different websites like MySpace, Bebo. We used messaging apps like ICQ, MSN Messenger. So this was like a big nostalgia trip for me. Like number one, this person's playing one of my favorite games of all time. They're doing it faster than anyone on the planet. And there's people to talk to. This is incredible. I've never experienced anything like this. So for the next 5 hours, I watched and I watched and I watched and I watched, and I was so immersed. And I didn't understand Twitch culture. I didn't know what Kappa was, OPOP, all these emotes, Francoface Z. Now, if you're from Twitch, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're outside of Twitch, this is a whole different universe that exists on the internet, a whole different subculture on Twitch. So this is 2017 January, and I was absolutely mind blown. I couldn't believe what I was experiencing. So at that point, I've kind of figured out what time he was streaming. He tended to stream around early afternoon for me in Melbourne, Australia. So every day he would go live around the same time. And for the next week, I watched his stream like every day. Now, around this time, I just started my current job that I'm working now, when it was starting in a business that was just being rebuilt. So I was part of a business, and I still am part of a business that was initially being rebuilt and now it's successful. So I've had a whole different journey. We'll go into that another time. So I'm at work and I'm on my lunch break and I have Twitch up. Now, Skater, he does something called a raid. A raid is where you bring your audience to another streamer. So it's like paying it forward, basically. So around the time, it was the day before, Skater raided my friend Kyle. So Kyle was my best friend from Twitch, and I actually flew to America to meet him as well back in 2019. We're still best friends. The day before, he raided Kyle, and Kyle was also a Zelda speedrunner. Now, he wasn't on the level of like a Torj or Skater, for example, but he did it for fun, and he was doing like a race with his friends on an online call. Now, Skater raided him, and I'll never forget the raid. We raided him with pizza emotes. And I'm pretty sure I gave Skater that idea, but you know, I won't take full credit for that. Anyway, Skater raids Kyle, and I thought Kyle was really cool, so I followed him. So on Twitch, you can follow people. It's like following people on Instagram or Facebook. Very similar mechanism. Anyway, so from that point on, the next day, I think I was at my lunch break, and I was watching Kyle's stream, and he was playing Banjo-Kazooie, and he was streaming to 0 people at the time, and he can confirm this. And I had like a 30-minute lunch break, and I went into his chat, and it was just me and him, like him and I, well, better English. And we're just talking. And he's like, "Oh, hey, Richard, nice to meet you. I'm Kyle." And I'm like, "Hey, man, what's going on, dude? This is really cool. Like, I didn't know you can do this live streaming thing." And then I started asking questions. I said, "So how do you do this? Like, how do you speedrun Zelda? Like, how do you live stream to Twitch? Like, this is amazing." And Kyle is such a good guy. That's like, to this day, I still like message him on Discord all the time, send him memes, because without him, I probably wouldn't be here right now in terms of like my progress as a person, because he has such a huge role in my life. Now, Kyle took the time. He stopped playing Banjo, and he took the time to show me his setup. So he showed me, oh, so I use something called Open Broadcasting Software, short for and we call it OBS. It's a software that allows you to live stream from your computer to Twitch. You need something called a stream key. He goes, I use an emulator. I use something called a Mayflash adapter, which is like a thing that goes into your GameCube controller can plug into this. Then this goes into your USB port in your computer. And he spent all this time explaining to me how to do it. Now I'm like, wow, okay. So I went to some random website and I bought myself a Mayflash. I bought myself a controller. And this is about early February. So at the time, I also did try live streaming. So I'm trying to like keep the story in sync. There's other details I want to fill in. So I did test live streams. Like I did use like a Logitech controller using my laptop. I didn't have a webcam at the time, and I tried it out a little bit. But it wasn't until Kyle like really like defined what you need to do. So he showed me what to do, and then I did a couple test streams. But I believe my first official stream, according, if I can remember this correctly, was February 12th, 2017. This is when I did my first official stream. And Skater was there, and another friend named Georgia was there too. So now I tried it out, and I'm like, you know what? I really want to learn how to. I want to give this a try. So at the time, I had no concept of live streaming being a career. I had no concept of becoming the fastest speedrunner in the world. So what happened was I learned the same category that Torj and Skater were running, except I was running what's called an older route. So an older route, which is basically like a slower version of how to beat the game fast, which was only by like 2 or 3 minutes. Now, what happened was for the next 2 days, I wasn't working those 2 days. I practiced, I learned the speedrun, and I did my first completed speedrun. It took me 1 hour and 9 minutes. 1 hour and 9 minutes. I got killed by the final boss like 9 times. I failed all the tricks over and over and over again. And I'll never forget this. I completed my first speedrun, and I had other people in a voice call with me too. I believe at the time he went by the name Eminem, and Kyle was also in the call as well. Now I finished this speedrun, and it was pretty amazing. I felt this huge sense of accomplishment, and it was that day that I decided I'm going to get the world record. I'm going to get the world record. And I remember like at the time, like I announced it, and like a lot of people didn't believe me. Like, because this is the thing. Now that you might know me more, like when I say I'm going to do something, I truly believe I'm going to do it. Now, whether I do it or not, that's subject, to like the actual result. But I've always believed that I can achieve big things. Now, the question was, what is that? I tried basketball, I tried skateboarding, I tried music, I tried competitive 8-ball, and I did very good in 8-ball. But for some reason, beating Zelda, the fastest in the world, stood out to me. So my journey began. I started regularly streaming in 2017. Most of the time, I would start around 7:30 p.m. at night, and I'd stream hours and hours and hours to a handful of people, just a handful of people. And those people, to this day, I'm very thankful for their support. We've had our differences, we've had our ups and downs. Like, trust me, I reflect back to who I was when I was 25 to who I am at 32. I've changed a lot in those years, and I have live streaming to thank and speedrunning to thank for that, and all the people who were patient with me throughout that time, because nobody's perfect, Like, if I could go back and mentor my 25-year-old self, I have a list of things I could say to that version of me. But this is where I am now. So from 2017 to 2018, I climbed the leaderboards. So they have something called a leaderboard. My personal best in speedrunning was improving rapidly. I went from a 1 hour and 9 speedrun to 30 minutes, to 28 minutes, to 26 minutes, to 23 minutes, to 21 minutes, to 20 minutes. And as I was approaching the world record, people started to take notice of me. In particular, other speedrun streamers. So bigger speedrun streamers like Torj, Skater, Margin Phil, Simple Flips. I think eventually Caleb Hart found me as well. A lot of big streamers started discovering me. And what happened was that was the catalyst for me growing as a streamer. Because at the time, I was sold on the idea that I needed to make YouTube vlogs. So I come from a background of content. I used to run Facebook pages, Instagram pages. I've always made content from a young age, but Twitch is something that I never really experienced before. So I brought like a 2013 YouTube meta to Twitch, and it sort of worked, but I do believe people got value from my vlogs. So I ended up making hundreds of YouTube vlogs that will be exclusively available on my Patreon in the future. I'll give you guys the announcement for that in the future. I've taken them all down for now because I did say a lot of like edgy things back then that unfortunately in a modern internet world, you can get canceled for on the internet. And yeah, so I'm like, you know what? I've got to do a bit of damage control here. That was me from age 25 to then. I've changed, I've evolved, I have different views on things now. But unfortunately on the internet, even if something happened so long ago, people will still hold you to that. So I've had to protect myself. Anyway, so 2020, around 2020 is when I achieved my very first world record. Now, just before that, I went to America. I took a solo trip to America for 1 month. I attended an event called Summer Games Done Quick 2019. So it was a charity speedrunning event where they raise money for certain foundations, like to help fight cancer, to help doctors, like to pay for medical staff to go help people in need. And I flew to America, and Torj requested me to commentate on his speedrun. Now, this is why I want to say, like, it wasn't just about speedrunning, it was the people that I met. So here's the principle that I want to share with you. So we're going to go into the principle section now. So bear with me, it's going to be a long episode. I hope you got some popcorn, if healthy popcorn. So there's a principle I learned from a speaker named Eric Thomas, and it goes like this. Go where you are celebrated, not where you are tolerated. Go where you are celebrated, not where you are tolerated. One more time. Go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. So this is the principle, okay? And I'm going to explain to you how this principle changed my life, specifically in the last 7 years. So last year, to add some context, I finally received my diagnosis for ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I'm a neurodivergent, right? I'm not neurotypical. So I always felt out of place in the world ever since I was a kid. Like, I felt misunderstood. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I was tolerated for who I was. I didn't know that there were other people like me out there on a mass scale. So it's why Twitch was such a big, what's it called? Breath of fresh air. Yeah, that's what it is. So when I discovered Twitch, I was surrounded by people who are similar to me. Because the majority of my life, I felt like I didn't belong. Like in class, in school, I felt like I didn't belong. In sports, I didn't feel like I didn't belong. In the pool hall, I felt like I didn't belong. I was always so different from everyone around me. It's when I discovered Twitch that I found people who were very similar to me, other people who had very similar tendencies. I didn't know that it was called neurodivergency at the time. I didn't know it was called ADHD. I didn't know it was like, being on this spectrum necessarily, right? So when I went to Summer Games Done Quick 2019 and I went to this hotel in Minneapolis and I was surrounded by hundreds of people who are very similar to me, I finally felt like I belonged for the first time in my life. Truthfully, like in the gym, I felt like I didn't belong. In the pool hall, like I definitely had friends, don't get me wrong, but I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like I didn't belong. I always felt like I was tolerated. Now, was I actually tolerated? It was mostly in my head, right? Now that I think back, because like I used to think that everybody hates me. Now that comes down to my anxiety. That's just something I have to live with. But I went to an environment where I felt celebrated for who I was. Like I would walk around the hotel lobby and people were like, yo, Richard Sage, I love your streams, dude. You're awesome. You had such an impact on my life. And I'm just like, wow, I've never heard this before. This is amazing. I was partying daily. I was going to restaurants. I was hanging out with other gamers. They laughed at my jokes. They didn't think my jokes were weird. And it was such a life-changing experience for me going to SGDQ 2019 because, in person, I was surrounded by people who were just like me. And I never really got to experience that, like throughout my childhood, throughout high school, throughout university. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like I didn't get along with people. It just felt like I was an outsider. I felt like I had to put on an act. I felt like I had to put on a mask to be accepted. But when I went to this environment, I was loved for who I was. I was celebrated for who I was. Now, that's an internal experience. In reality, people have treated me well. In reality, people did like me. I just didn't feel that on the inside at the time because I went through so much trauma. So this was 2019. It was June, July 2019. And then I came back from America. And at the time, I was 4th place in the world. Jodenstone, the legendary Jodenstone, had just come back to speedrunning and bopped me out of 3rd place and made me 4th place. So at this time, I've been speedrunning for just over 2.5 years. I had just become a Twitch partner. So it took me 2.5 years to become a Twitch partner. I became a Twitch partner in April 2019. And I then went absolute grind mode. From July 2019 up until I believe it was March 2020, I was streaming so much. I was doing so many speedrun attempts. I was doing so much practice off stream as well. And then I finally got my first world record. It was a 16:56, I believe it was. I beat Torge's time by 2 seconds, and to be fair, I did have a new strategy that was a lot faster. So in reality, Torge's run was actually better than mine. I just had a faster strategy, but still, world record's world record. And what a journey that was, because throughout from 2017 to 2018 to 2019 to 2020, my personality changed a lot throughout that time. To put it into context, like the people who watched my early streams, like you would know that I was very, very edgy. I had a lot of hot takes on a lot of things. Trust me now when I say I disagree with like 99% of the things I used to say back then. But understand that if you did have a difference with me, understand that that was just me at the time. In my heart, I truly believed I had a good intent with most people. Like I might have rubbed people the wrong way. I might have said things that you didn't agree with. I might have taken things the wrong way. But understand that that was just me at that stage of evolution. People change, people grow. So, I'll put this out here. If you're listening to this now, you're 24 minutes into the podcast. If I ever hurt you, if I ever let you down, if I ever feel like, if there ever was like a miscommunication, I deeply apologize. I truly mean that. I didn't mean to hurt anyone if I did, because, nobody's perfect. And I take full accountability and responsibility for my life. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying to evolve as a person. And I look at my life now at 32, and I'm so thankful for all the people who were part of my journey up until now. And I'm excited for my journey for the next decade, given that life gives me that blessing to continue living and live a good life. Every day I don't take for granted. But streaming and speedrunning really, really set me forward as a person. Like, I go back and I look at some of my, 2017 vlogs, 2018 vlogs. Like I had good intent, I had good ideas, I had good knowledge, but now I've really applied it. I was able to make a small living as a streamer. I made a lot of sacrifices. I passed up on getting full-time jobs, but I just followed my heart. Now, we'll go from 2020 onwards. So I wanted to put that out there for the listeners who, you know who you are, who I'm reaching out to. And for the people who are listening to me, I just want you to know that I have a healing heart. I've been on this journey for a long time. So now, we enter 2020, 2021. I just completed a big weight loss journey. I got down to 72 kilos, and we had just entered the COVID lockdowns. So if you guys are listening to this in the future, and you also experienced it too, or maybe you're listening to this 20 years from now. I don't know if this is still going to be on the internet by then. We went through a lot of lockdowns. So the world went through and is still through a pandemic. Now, we can argue, is it still a pandemic at this point in 2023? But we went into lockdowns, and this is where my streaming career really took off. Because at the time, a lot of people weren't able to go to work. A lot of people lost their jobs, including me. My work hours got cut down to 1 day in the office per week. So all I could do was stream and work out in my garage gym. And in that time, I achieved world records. In that time, I connected with people all across the world. In that time, I got to live a fulfilling life in spite of the difficult circumstances. So from 2020 to 2021, I streamed all throughout the Melbourne lockdowns. Like Dan Andrews locked us down like over 6 times that I can remember. And I saw the biggest growth. Now, at the time, I was juggling between wanting to get a full-time job and just treat streaming as a hobby. But because I saw so much success, I believed that, maybe this is going to be my career. So I'm going to give it my best. I had no other option. Like I could have applied for, hybrid work from home jobs, but I'm like, I'm young. I've got the opportunity. I'm still living at home. I might as well go for it. So from 2020, 2021, 2022, I streamed a lot. I created a lot of content. I really put myself out there. And eventually I reached burnout because I wasn't achieving the financial success and the career aspiration that I thought I was going to achieve. I truly believed that if I streamed, 6 to 10 hours a day, made YouTube videos, made Instagram posts, that eventually my numbers would climb. But I never went beyond a certain number. I never got beyond 200 average viewers. But I did have a lot of support, and I still thank you all to this day for supporting me throughout that time. So 2022, I started seeing a lot of decline in my stream. I started seeing, the more effort I was putting, I was getting less back. My numbers were going down. My subscription count was going down. My engagement was going down. My audience seemed less interested in what I was doing. And it hurt because I'm like, wow, I've put, over 6 years of my life into this and I didn't make it, and this is where I really struggled because I'm like, I really did give it my all. Maybe those things I could have done better. Maybe there's things I could have like really, done like to the best of my ability. Maybe I could have streamed more. Maybe I could have made more videos. But it hurt that to put over 6 years of my life into something and I didn't make it. It didn't become my full-time career. It wasn't sustainable. I was getting mentally burned out. I was getting frustrated. I had to think to myself, maybe I have to do other things. Maybe I have to do this. And when I tried those things, it didn't feel honest to me. I didn't like it, So it's around that time that I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So this is the next part of my life. It was when I discovered Jiu-Jitsu that I realized that, wait a second, this is me now. I was 30 years old at the time when I discovered Jiu-Jitsu. Wow, I've had 2 birthdays now going through Jiu-Jitsu. That's crazy. So I was 30 and I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is just the next phase of my life. Maybe streaming was meant to be a phase of my life. Maybe I just wasn't meant to make it as a streamer. Maybe I wasn't meant to be the 10K Andy, the 10,000 viewer streamer. Maybe that's for other people. But I will tell you this. I have no regrets about putting 6.5 years of my life into speedrunning and streaming because I look at who I am now as a person and I am light years ahead of who I was when I was 25. And who I was when I was 25 was light years ahead of who I was at 18. That is the truth. So I'm grateful. I'm thankful. And I'm at a point in my life now where things are going very well for me. I'm currently on the job hunt. I'm looking for a new full-time job. I've sent out job applications. I'm getting in good shape. I'm in a happy relationship. I've recultivated my faith with Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. I've come back to the Christian faith, and I've reconnected with my family. I'm making a positive impact on the people in my life. I've made new friends. And I have streaming to thank for that. Like, I think if I didn't do those 6.5 years, would I be the person I am now? You know, like, I honed my craft as a speaker. Like, my ability to, like, pump out 30-minute episodes with just a handful of notes, with no rehearsal, one take, that comes from 6.5 years of streaming. Those 10,000 plus hours I put in were not for nothing. So I want to put this out here. If you are a person who tried to become a streamer and you didn't make it, let me tell you, as someone who has experienced this, it wasn't for nothing, okay? It wasn't for nothing. You grew in some way. You cultivated a skill in some way, and that will prepare you for the next thing. Like, even this podcast project, maybe this is not my thing either. Maybe this will make me a radio host in the future. I don't know what it's going to be, but understand this. So this is principle number 2, okay? Everything is practice for the next thing, okay? So the first principle was go where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. You want to be in an environment where people genuinely appreciate you for who you are. They don't just tolerate who you are. It doesn't mean they don't give you feedback. It doesn't mean they don't challenge you to be better and become a stronger and better person. But what I'm saying is that you will eventually find those environments where people truly like you for who you are. You're not perfect. They know you've got room to grow. You know, I'm lucky that people entered my life where they just celebrated my weirdness. They celebrated my awkwardness. They celebrated the fact that I can switch between 100 topics at once, that I can talk endlessly for hours. That's just me, who I am. You know, like, that's just me. You know, and I finally met people who liked me for me. And that's when I flourished. That's when I grew. That's when I really became the person I know I can be. And I'm still becoming that person. But if you put a seed in contaminated soil, it doesn't matter how much you water it, it's not going to grow. So sometimes you got to just put yourself in a healthier place, and it might take time to find that place. So we go back to principle 2, which is everything is practice for the next thing. So I can pump out 30-minute episodes, like, because I've talked so much as a streamer. I've learned to come up with topics nonstop. I can enter other people's podcasts and just go on the fly, have a million things to talk about. And that's because of all the practice I've put in. So even if you haven't achieved a particular result that you want right now, I'm just saying right now that who you are now and the journey you are now, it has a purpose. It may have a reason. I don't know if it's esoteric necessarily. Maybe it's part of God's plan, but understand that where you are now is preparation for the future. Where you are now, it's all preparation for the future. So that's how I became the fastest speedrunner in the world. I discovered Twitch on YouTube. I watched speedrunners. I tried it. I became the fastest speedrunner in the world 5 times. I achieved 5 world records. I'm still 3rd place in the defeat gunning category, no SRM at the time of this recording. And sometimes I think maybe I should go back in the future and get that one more world record. But to be honest, as of this moment, at this moment, I believe that I need to walk away from streaming as a active thing. I need to go live my life somewhere else. I need to go do other things. I need to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu. I need to go coaching people in 8-ball. I'll still stream here and there. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's not like I'll never stream ever again. But there's a saying, what got you here will not get you there. This is a paraphrase version. So what got you here will not get you there. And I felt like I was, you know, just repeating the same things over and over and over again, hoping for a different result. It wasn't until I let go and said, you know what, maybe this isn't my thing, that I finally felt freedom. I feel more free now. I feel ready to go for the future and the things in my life. So this is episode 8. Thank you so much for joining. There's definitely more things I can tell you on this. But, you know, understand that, you know, for me, this was a 6.5 year phase of my life, you know, and I truly believe that every phase of your life will bring you closer to your true calling. Now, I may discover my true calling next week. It could happen 7 years from now. It could be 20 years from now. But each day I wake up and I live on centered values. I try to improve as a person. You know, I create content. I love making content. I love making videos. I love making episodes. I love connecting with people. I love trying to add value. Whether I get it right or wrong, I don't know. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't claim to be the best. I don't claim to be number one. You know, I'm just a regular human being. I'm 32 years old. You know, I'm broke. Like, I'm not rich. I'm broke. I live paycheck to paycheck. but I just live my life, and maybe one day I'll get there, and, streaming just wasn't it. Maybe in the future it will be. Maybe I'll get my lucky break. Maybe it just wasn't meant to be for now. But I will leave you with this. Just take it one day at a time. One day at a time. Try and improve it one thing at a time. And you will see that you have so much potential. It may not happen right away. It may not happen overnight. But you can do it. All right. So take care. Peace out. I'll see you on the next episode. If you're listening on YouTube, please drop a comment, drop a like, subscribe, share it with people. I want this podcast to get out into the world and make an impact on that one person. Like, even if just one person gets something from this, then I believe I'm doing something important in this world. If you're listening on Spotify, please leave a positive review. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or anywhere in the world, please leave a positive review. Share it with the world. If you think there's somebody out there that can gain something from this, share it with somebody, because I'm just putting myself out there. I don't claim to be perfect. I'm just trying my best. But thank you for joining me for this, my longest episode. I believe this is my longest episode to date. So thank you. Take care. Peace out. Love you heaps. This will be on pretty much every platform in the world, on YouTube, on podcasts. And if you made it all the way, can I just say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for believing in me. Thank you for hanging in there with me. Through my ups, through my downs, through my struggles, through my depression, through my anxiety, through my alcohol use disorder, through my binge eating disorder, through my laziness, through my ambitions. Thank you. Thank you all. And we're going to get there one day at a time. So take care. I'll see you next time. Have a lovely week. Have a lovely day. And one day at a time. Take care.